Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer. If you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. On this episode, we're going to mix it up a little bit, and I'm glad to feature our guest, Daniel Lynch. Daniel, thanks so much for joining the show once again.
Yes, pleasure to be here. Big news in the AI world today.
Yep, and that's going to be the topic of this episode is if you're living under a rock in the world of AI, OpenAI just announced the release of a brand new language model called GPT-4o. So the previous model was just GPT-4 Turbo. That was their most advanced model previously, and now it's GPT-4o. So Daniel, any initial reactions on this announcement?
I think that this is the beginning of mainstream adoption for AI. It's the Alexa moment. It's the Siri moment. It's where people can use their mobile device to scan, listen, type, multimodal, and start solving everyday queries in a conversational UI. Historically, AI tools were not very friendly to the average person. Mainstream adoption, most people were not going to go to the ChatGPT website or use their API. But now for the average person, for the first time, we now have the ability to bring a better version of that AI technology, that language learning model, to the average person on their cell phone, where they can just be driving, they can be doing whatever, and start engaging through those voice assistants. And this is a breakthrough. In my opinion, I was expecting a little bit bigger news with the search engine potential here, but this is a very strategic move by OpenAI to get more adoption, get more eyeballs. And we know that with anything that when there's a search engine, there has to be monetization of it, right? In order to justify the means. And right now, they're making a play to get as many eyeballs as they can on their platform.
Yeah, so that's the first thing I should have mentioned is that this will be free to all users versus GPT-4 was exclusive to users of ChatGPT Plus for $20 a month. So I've been trying to read all sorts of stuff on their press release, and I'm curious about like DALL-E, custom GPTs, like all the other features that came with ChatGPT Plus. Is that just eliminated now? I don't know. I don't think we have answers for that yet.
Well, it's about the rate limits, right? What they're trying to do here is they're targeting the average person. They're not targeting agencies like us, super users, enterprise. I mean, my last OpenAI bill was like $6,000, right? So I would say that I would probably have to upgrade to the paid one to use that model for that rate limiting, right? But what they're doing here is they're trying to get eyeballs and people to use them and replace their voice assistant and take a shot at both Google, Apple, and Amazon all at the same time. Very bold move, and they knew that they had to do it at a very low price point or free to get that mainstream adoption, that volume up, because when someone realizes that they can bring their iPhone out like they did in the video and go over linear algebra, y equals mx plus b, right, and do a mathematical equation, it nailed it on the head of explaining it. But what was really interesting to me, Ryan, was for the first time we actually had empathy in their UI with how it engaged you. Before, it used to sound very machine-like, and we were using Claude to get that ability to have more conversational intelligence, right? Of how it was able to deploy semantic context. And it was like, you heard her on the video, it was like, oh, you're breathing too fast, ha ha ha, and it matched the tone of what you would expect. For me, that's the kind of scary part here, is now it really is becoming more and more human-like, and this was the free version, right?
So I think in my opinion, you brought up search engine, and that was what we were all anticipating today, is to them announce a new AI-powered search engine to compete with Google. But I think you're right. I think this is phase one, and the reason they opened this up for free is think about all the data they're going to get from average everyday users versus closing this off to paid people, which was a very minority of ChatGPT users. Like we both have Plus accounts, we use it every day, but we're not in the majority. So I think this is phase one of their search engine, is just collect as much data as they possibly can, and then eventually they're going to roll that out. And I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't think anyone does unless you're at OpenAI. I would presume in weeks, if not months, since there's been rumors of this announcement coming soon. So I'm curious to see what that's going to look like when it first rolls out.
Ryan, when we build websites, and I predicted this, over a year ago, we need to be ready for referral traffic from AI tools, language learning models. And so per our Google Analytics and some of our core clients, we've actually have seen traffic come from ChatGPT OpenAI, right? That as more tools start to give the ability, or they feel obligated ethically to list the citation of which they pulled that source, well, someone may click on that, right? And so what I actually would, predict, and I don't know when this would happen, I wouldn't be surprised is when we start logging into OpenAI, we start seeing links where they're testing what people will click on to refer. And at the end of the day, we know with anything with paid search, which this would obviously be a play at that at some point, right? They're probably going to start figuring out for the average person, not a super user, we're using the API because the API person would never be on their phone using it, right? For the average soccer mom, what are they clicking on, where, and knowing where to position what calls to action to start A/B testing to prepare for that monetization model, where phase 2 would be the search engine aspect, where you can, find search queries of like, find me a business that can solve water heat, that can do water heaters right now, right? Where should I go if I'm sick right now with this? And really what we need to realize here is that the ultimate stage of AI is to take as much data as possible and then start making assumptions, personas of what you're looking for. And you better believe when OpenAI connects your knowledge base of all the other cookies out there and they get all that information, that they're going to start pinpointing exactly what you like and start putting offers and calls to action that people will click on and companies will be willing to pay for.
The monetization part is very interesting to me. And I've been reading a lot of experts or expert marketers that I follow to see what they think. And one guy, I can't remember who it was, but he had a very interesting point. He said, where does pay-per-click come into the mix? How is ChatGPT determining who to rank for various queries? Now, if you go to their website and look at all the recent news, they've been strategically partnering with these huge media companies, Dotdash Meredith most notably, Financial Times, and all these other huge media giants. So that begs the question to me, is this going to be pay to play now? If you're not a huge media company in bed with OpenAI, are they not going to reward you? Is there any sort of paid search option? Honestly, I think this makes Google look good right now until we see the final product.
Well, I think the lurking variable, Ryan, is going to be OpenAI's stance on the creator economy that will emerge as the economy starts to tank. Because you better believe that everybody who had to go back to their 9-to-5 cubicle after having all that time off with COVID, and then they get laid off or something doesn't work out, a lot of people are going to be thinking, hey, how can I be an entrepreneur? How can I maybe leverage creating social media content, creating content, monetizing it? And as we've seen, one of the big focal points that they were talking about today was the GPT marketplace, right? And that there is potential there to even advertise in the GPT marketplace based on what they were searching in ChatGPT, right? Who knows?
Well, that's interesting, though, because they claim that GPT creators could be monetized, but I have yet to see any trace of GPT creators being monetized yet.
Well, right now, it was very clear that they have the volume where they're just trying to dip their toes in the water. I personally think that they pulled back within the last year because of how, if you look at the economy since OpenAI came out, it's only, you could say it went up if you look at the stock market, but if you look at the numbers that actually matter and don't double count part-time jobs for the same person, right? People are struggling more than ever. And you better believe every business owner out there is thinking, how can I replace humans with robots, right? And if you're not a good business owner, because you should be, right? And it's not about ethics here, it's about good business. That, in the 90s, 2000s, and the late, all those years, people were outsourcing to India, Philippines, right? Upwork, if I had to guess, is probably going downhill because no one's going to hire them anymore, right? So it's
replace them.
Yeah, why would you hire someone who's just going to use AI most likely anyways, right? And the reality is we're coming to an inflection point one way or another where the Industrial Revolution, when the Industrial Revolution has mainstream adoption, just like the printing press, the automobile, right? There's going to be so many ripples that we don't know where it's going to go. And so I believe that when we look at this is that the content creator economy with more mainstream adoption creates, for all we know, OpenAI could start their own social media network next. We don't know. Once you get eyeballs, look at what Facebook did, look at what Amazon did, right? Once you get people's attention, you can spin it any way you want. And that's why at Empathy First Media, when we started designing websites, we've been building them AI first for the last year and a half, where we are actually building a semantic context layer of the SEO of certain words to provide definitions, structured markup data, rich snippets, because that is the content that will show up in OpenAI most likely because it's in JSON LD or some type of markup language that OpenAI can interpret. And if you're linking that to Wikidata, you're linking that to other sources, it's able to connect the dots better. And I'm more interested in just seeing when they get eyeballs, what's to say that they don't start their own, news, like we have Google News, OpenAI News, right? And that would be interesting, Ryan, though, of who do they put at the top, right? Notice that for the GPT marketplace, they always have a couple favorites, right? So
Canva and like the big boys.
Well, they did. I think it was Consensus was one of the big ones, a medical one that was like their number one integration. But we have not really even, this is like, the dial-up modem in the 70s compared to where we're going to be here in even 6 months or a year. And that I think OpenAI is just making a play of getting more eyeballs and A/B testing people with data because they have AI that will do it because they said their data analytic capacity has gone up exponentially, right? And that as they get more people, I think that they will have more monetization models. They'll have more opportunities to create content, sell content. And for all we know, they could create their own digital marketplace too, right? Like, which they're already doing with the GPT marketplace. Yes, no one has really monetized it yet. But when you look at the capabilities of what you can do is that, once we hit a certain threshold of functionality in these learning models that we may only go one or two more for the next year and a half, right? But it's going to be fine-tuning all the agents that complete a specific task using a voice command, right? And then every time someone does it, it could be a Spotify model for all we know, right? Where they get a small fraction of it, right? Who knows what it's going to be like? It could be the Apple App Store. But times are changing, and let's not forget another lurking variable, the blockchain technology, right? That we have not even crossed into OpenAI in blockchain technology yet, but the blockchain would give it the ability to have a hash code that would give it a memory it can learn from, even more detailed, that could not be changed. And so I believe OpenAI is doing a lot of big things, but I would keep eyes on Mistral and Claude. With Anthropic. Those are my two.
Google's always the wild card too with how much data they have.
Well, we won't go down the Google Gemini of what I got from that because we were all a little confused of what it gave us on the other end, right? Because they're
still a wild card, man. They're one of the biggest companies in the history of the world, so you can't count them out.
Well, when I look at everything and what my plan is for AI is that I use a tool called Stack AI to build custom AI apps for our clients. And what's really interesting is that if you have one really good vector database, well, you could have multiple models at the same time, pull from the same data, and pull on the strengths of each one. So you could have OpenAI do the research, and you could have Anthropic actually rewrite it all to sound more human-like in a certain dialogue. But at the end of the day, all the data will be interconnected, right? And that's where I'm going with it. And OpenAI is just making sure that they're getting their, skin in the game every way they can. So not that anyone's going to forget them, but I truly believe the goal is just mainstream adoption, just like when everybody got an Alexa for the first time, everybody got an iPhone for the first time, and people start using it in their car to say, hey, what's the quickest way to get home? And all of a sudden they have a different result than what Apple Maps or Google Maps says.
Look at the ecosystem play that Apple and Google have built for the past 10, 15, 20 years, where once you're in their ecosystem, well, it's a pain in the ass to try to change to any other sort of software. So it's that early adoption, trying to get people in that OpenAI ecosystem as early as possible and then upsell them products along the way.
Yes, 100%. And, with OpenAI as well, I would be curious to see what they do with Sora when that comes out, right? That now you can actually scan something you imagine, use that as an input for Sora, talk about what you want in a conversational format, and then imagine if you had an Apple headset, right? And you're in a 3D type interface, talking to the AI in real time, making video modifications. You just knocked out all the glorified camera guys out there, in one shot.
Drone footage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people don't realize that if you fight AI, you are not adopting it, you're doubting it, you are going to get left behind before you even realize it. And that every single person can find some way to get a piece of the pie if they apply themselves and just start messing around. But a lot of people are afraid. It was when we started using it, it was so much harder, bro. It's so much easier now. I mean, it's really night and day compared to how it used to be. So
yeah, absolutely. It's in a nice UI where before you had to download all these local machines, and Tyler, our developer, was always trying to get me to all these workarounds with locally. I'm like, now it's just like you just go to an interface like a typical website, typed in these prompts and boom, you're off to the races.
I'm really excited about using this. As we've talked, Ryan, I've been developing AI apps for us internally here for a little while. And, they've been a lot of advances in these codeless apps where you can integrate with something like this. And now you could even white label and sell a translation tool in real time. And no one would know the difference.
The translation thing is huge too. I mean, real time. It can even have video to probably see where you're at. Because, like Spanish, right? There's different tones of Spanish in Spain versus Mexico. Maybe if it knows that you're in Spain, it'll translate in the Spain version versus the version in Mexico. So that's a very interesting point.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know how people are going to monetize it. And that's why I said the content creator for me is the biggest wild card. Because all it takes is some kids in a basement somewhere who get an idea. And now that they have something that's more mainstream, that is not robot sounding, you can choose the voice. I see a huge need here for people to make AI voices. And we've done a little bit experiment with that on our SEO, Ryan, of people love celebrity voices. They love Trump, Joe Biden voices. For some reason,
those tools have existed for at least a year now, too.
Exactly. And I'm curious to see, are they going to get knocked out, or do they have a place to help? You could sell a voice that you make custom for a particular, if you're a financial advisor, you need to have a certain tone of voice. You need to have a certain expertise, authority, you're trained in it, and tie it to a vector database. And I just really believe it was just a teaser, right? It's the free version. They're not even trying to monetize it. They have no plans to monetize it,
Yeah.
So
not yet. Eventually they will. But yeah, they just probably play to collect a ton of data first. One other thing I want to get your thoughts on before we close this kind of quick episode here. Bing search. So Microsoft obviously is the biggest investor in OpenAI, and they have been. If ChatGPT would not exist if it weren't for Microsoft investing billions of dollars. I don't think people realize that. So in my head, I'm like, why would Microsoft allow them to launch a search engine when they're just going to completely sacrifice Bing and Microsoft Copilot and all the stuff that they have going on with Microsoft? What are your thoughts on that?
There's no sacrifice here, Ryan. There's never sacrifice in this type of industry, right? In the tech space. I truly believe Microsoft is making a very strategic move that if you go look on the back end of Azure and everything, they're already integrated to infinity and beyond. And so this is the backbone, I believe, for integrating this type of technology also into the Outlook suite, right? And having built-in functionality that you can upgrade to there, custom to the company, the brand voice, how do we make an email? And it's going to be a way to communicate with people who are not tech savvy and they're afraid. They won't know the difference between this and Alexa or Siri, right? Or Watson. It's going to be a way to bring more functionality. And let's be real here too. Microsoft Bing gets growth every year over year, taking it away from one player, in particular Google, right? And they've been making a play at this. And Google and Microsoft, the advertising platform has never been nearly as lucrative as with Google AdWords. We barely even use it because we can't get the ROI on it for our clients. But the stage is set, right? That they could piggyback the Microsoft ecosystem with this functionality and keep adding, customizing content creators. If you look at Microsoft's app marketplace, they have a very robust marketplace already as well. And so I believe that we are just seeing the tail end of the beginning, and we're like now through the pre-phase, right? And the beginning is going to start with more people using it, finding more ways to monetize it, and ultimately replace whatever the current equivalent is of the Yellow Pages. And no one thought the Yellow Pages would go away. I talked to people who said, I advertise in the Yellow Pages every single day. It's how I built my business, right? Well, I believe that people who are early adopters in the AI and different platforms, even exploring a little into the blockchain space, right? When it hits, it's gonna hit good, right? And that's why all of our websites, we actually made a custom crawling file for the OpenAI bots and all the other ones we've identified to encourage them to index our clients. Anybody who does not want to be indexed by OpenAI because you're trying to protect your data, I'll be honest, everybody's going to get what they want anyways on the internet, right? You'll never know the difference. At least get the referral traffic and monetize it where you can.
Yeah, and that's just really interesting. I was looking at the news section while you were talking about that, and yeah, Financial Times, Dotdash Meredith, like they've been strategically making these partnerships for several months now. So I think that is no mistake, because when I first saw that, I'm like, well, why would they make these partnerships? And now it's all coming back together of it really is going to be a big pay-to-play system when they launch this search engine. That's how I take it anyways.
And look at Google's potentially going to buy HubSpot, right? And then you would have that ecosystem. And it's really going to be that these huge tech companies have to adopt or marry one of these language learning models, right? I mean, that's the reality of it. They can't do all of them. And so we see a lot of people uniting with either OpenAI or Google, obviously, right? Those are the two big horses that people are kind of integrating with. But Claude and Mistral, man, people are not talking about those.
I'm almost wondering if Claude and Mistral will be eaten up by Microsoft or OpenAI as they keep growing. I know Claude's got a big back from Amazon, but I don't know, man. That's going to be really interesting to see how these other LLMs respond.
Yeah, I mean, I personally use Mistral more than any of them. And most people don't even know Mistral is an option, but Mistral's newest model, the 8x8 model, I don't know the exact name of it, for what I do in healthcare with our clients, integrative medicine, it's actually the only unbiased LLM out there. And that is something to consider here, guys, right? Is that the biggest ones are always the most biased. The ones that you haven't heard of are the ones that actually pull in data that's not going to be completely manipulated. And if you look at the outputs from OpenAI, I encourage everybody to do this. Go type in holistic cancer treatments or a different point of view in healthcare into OpenAI or Claude. Sometimes they won't even complete the query stating that they cannot provide medical misrepresentation when there's plenty of data and science to back these treatments. And so
it's a new form of censorship. Google's been doing this for years, and people they're starting to catch on more now with DuckDuckGo and all these alternative search engines, but this is going to be a brand new form of censorship is what you're alluding to.
Yeah, exactly, right? And that's why, everybody should be trying different models. OpenAI is going to get the lion's share of the average person, just like every censorship platform does. But where innovation comes in is people don't realize how many more models are being created every day that are pretty good. They just don't have the marketing budget that we have a keynote that shuts down the internet for a couple hours,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure. So, Daniel, this is the Marketing Quacks podcast. I do have to transition into that at least somewhat in the show here. So, where do you see some quacks developing with this new OpenAI model, with just any new updates in AI or large language models? I guess, what are your thoughts on a potential quack or quacks coming out of this?
Well, you're going to have two types of quacks, right? You're going to have the ones who build something and make it seem like it more than it is and just white label it's available to everybody for free, literally. And people will fall for it because they're going to see a video. But really what I see happening here is because it's so easy to use, a lot of people are going to be creating these like coaching and training and masterminds. Guys, you don't need to pay for any of that. Just go use it, literally, right? You see people are like, oh, let me teach you how to write email templates. And you literally could ask ChatGPT itself to give you the prompts to write the email template. There's no training on that, but so many people are programmed by our failed higher education system that they need to have a teacher, mentor, professor versus just do this thing called execution and just do it.
Fail. Just dive in and fail.
Just fail, right? And I see a lot of that coming here of people who act like they're these AI experts and they know so much. And you see them on YouTube where they're charging, I don't know, this one guy's charging like $1,500 an hour. And he literally just started making videos. He had never even done anything. And it's insane that...
Yeah, Insider Tips guy too. I think he's an expert.
Yeah, I heard that guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
I heard he spoke in Jacksonville.
Insider Tips on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, so...
But this has been fun, Daniel. Yeah, just a really quick episode, just getting our initial thoughts on OpenAI's big announcement of the new GPT-4o model. Any final thoughts here that you want to leave the audience before I conclude the episode?
I think a lot of people should be reevaluating their skill set. Because as it becomes more mainstream, jobs will not be replaced by AI. They will be replaced by humans who use AI. That's how technology works. And so once upon a time, there were people who would push a plow and said, I need a job. I'm a horse and buggy driver. This is what I do. People would rather be in a car than around horse shit all day. It's just a fact, right?
Same with the internet. The internet didn't replace people. It was people who use the internet that replaced people.
And so, I tell everybody, if you're under the age of probably like, I don't know, I would say like 45 right now, 50, you need to not fight this. I'm not saying go get a mastermind or coach either. Just use the noggin between your ears. It still works, I promise you. and push yourself to do something that you're afraid to do, because there's no way you can fail, because every time you fail, you just ask it how to do it right and it will tell you. It's the beautiful thing about AI, right? Is when you're wrong, it will tell you, and then but tell you how to fix it, and then learn your mistakes and how you think over time, and then know how to guide you in the future. So there's no way you can fail.
That's what I say in every AI presentation that I give, Daniel. It's adapt or die. It's Billy Beane's old mantra from the Oakland Athletics and Moneyball, how they revolutionized sports using big data. It's adapt or die, man. Regardless of what your feelings are about AI, if you feel threatened, if you hate AI, you're against it, it doesn't matter, because it's coming, it's here. We just saw another big update with OpenAI, and it's going to be coming regardless of whether you want it to or not. So it's truly an adapt or die situation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And on that note, I guess we'll end it here. Appreciate everyone for listening to this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. Be sure to tune in again for the next episode.